Do you guys? Okay, this is operator error. Bad start. Here we go. Regroup. Um, Welcome to an Insider Notebook with James Palmer here on Bleacher Report. Not the start we wanted, guys, but we'll finish strong. Trust me. We have a flurry of these coming to you. We have today. We have a regularly scheduled one at noon Eastern tomorrow. We have another one on Thursday. We have another one on Friday, Sunday, Monday, all of that leading into the trade deadline on Tuesday. And that's what we're going to mainly focus on today. We have some other topics, but most of them trade heavy. Make sure you get into the chat. Make sure you jump into here, and we have an opportunity to interact with each other in between each and every one of these topics. I'll try to answer as many as I can. Yesterday, some people were saying I always jump over their questions. I'll try not to be that guy. I'll try to answer as many as possible. We're going to talk about this wide receiver market in terms of potential players that could be available, potential teams that could be looking at wide receivers. We'll also talk about what other position maybe is getting a lot of buzz that I'm hearing around the league. Is there going to be a fire sale with the Jets? They're on a bye. They're going over everything in their organization right now. The Vikings quarterback situation, where does that stand with J.J. McCarthy? What do they need to see from him? What are they going to see from him in practice as he finally gets out to the ability to get back on the field? And Aaron Rodgers returning to the Steelers in 2026? Is he returning to the Steelers in 2026? Well, we'll see. Let's start with the wide receiver market. This is a fascinating one. This is one where we do expect some movement. We'll see how much movement there is, but there are needy teams. And I think that's a big part of this because there are teams that definitely are looking to add some wide receiver help. What's interesting is you can get a third-round pick for a wide receiver if you have somebody that is desired by other teams. That is a starter in the NFL. The market has shown you can get a good player. If you remember, last year, the Bills gave up a third-round pick for Amari Cooper. The Browns never thought they were going to get a third-rounder for Amari Cooper. But that's the way you can have receivers move before this deadline, and you can actually acquire some really decent capital if you're the team that is looking to sell off a commodity, say Amari Cooper. But the interesting part is, and maybe this plays a role or a factor, and maybe it doesn't, is the fact that there were a couple of moves last year, bigger named moves, and they didn't go so well. The Devontae Adams trade did not go great. The Amari Cooper trade did not go great. And does that make some people, go out there and want to be a little bit hesitant in terms of what they're doing at the position? Possibly, but I doubt it. First quotes in here are all about the Buffalo Bills is the first one there. I'm going to say that is a team, to my understanding, that is definitely very interested in adding a wide receiver. I mentioned they did it a year ago with Amari Cooper. It didn't work. But the issue is it's the same problem. They have no ability to threaten teams at the boundary at all. Keon Coleman, they thought maybe in year 2 he would take that jump. He has not made that jump. I think he had 112 or 118 receiving yards in week 1. He's at 155 total since. He's 72nd in the NFL in receiving. They're having an offense right now that is a run offense, but they can't threaten anybody outside. Josh Allen, with his unbelievable arm and skill set and the reigning MVP, just doesn't have the ability to throw the football downfield. They understand the problem that they have. Keep an eye on Buffalo being somebody that could be aggressive going after someone. Actually, I was just taping my show 89 that I do with Steve Smith Sr., one of the best receivers this league's ever seen. He brought it up. He said, Rashid Shaheed on that team would be unbelievable, he said. Adding him into the mix, and that's a player that could become available and a player that some teams are obviously looking at. That speed to take the top off the defense, the ability to get downfield, the ability to still do stuff in the intermediate section. That is a receiver that a lot of teams are thinking that could potentially be available that came, out of this group in New Orleans that some people think somebody is on the move. Because you have Chris Olave, who my understanding is they might be trying to work a contract extension out with and keeping him. He's going to go on to his 5th-year option in 2026. You have Shaheed that's going into free agency after this year. You have Brandon Cooks, who at 32 still could provide something, but he has guaranteed money into 2026, which could hinder that a little bit. And that's why Shaheed is kind of the one that everybody's looking at. And with the way the receiver market has gone in terms of price, they're not as strapped for cash as they have been in years past the Saints, but signing both Olave and Shaheed might be very difficult, and that speed is something that could be valued opposite of DK Metcalf with the Steelers. That is a team that is still evaluating if they want to add a wide receiver. Calvin Austin, they like him at the number 2 spot, maybe physically limited in some of the things he can do, but my understanding is they are looking to add because obviously they know they have a very small window with Aaron Rodgers to where they could go make a move towards a Super Bowl run. We know they get winning seasons, but can they make a playoff run with Aaron Rodgers? And they've done other things to show that Omar Khan will be aggressive. I know they're looking. I know they're evaluating. They're trying to see if they can add somebody opposite of DK. Shaheed would be a really, really good player there as well. I think Denver might be poking around at receivers. I'm not sure entirely how aggressively they are because I think they like their youngsters and Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant and Marvin Mims. But could they be another team that's kind of looking? So I think of Buffalo and you look at Pittsburgh. You look at maybe the Giants. That would have to be something that has to be long-term past this year that maybe could help out Jackson Dart now, but also be a complement to Malik Neighbors in 2026. I don't know if they make a move, but I think that's a team to maybe keep an eye on as well. But I think Buffalo is definitely a team to keep an eye on. I think Pittsburgh's a team to keep an eye on. And is Jacoby Myers available? I think that's one of the games that's come up the most maybe during this time. Pete Carroll doesn't like to tear everything down, but he's made it known that he'd like to play elsewhere. They did go and get Lockett, and there's some similar things in the intermediate game that both of these guys do. Jacoby Myers could be a name that some people could go out and maybe, there's value there. Let me just say that. There are teams that think he would definitely add to their offense and be that guy that can do the dirty work in the middle of the field, can really catch the ball in traffic, can be a good intermediate receiver, and be a nice complement to your passing offense. That's a name I would definitely keep an eye on, certainly with where he's at and where the Raiders are at as they evaluate everything. I don't know if I see Calvin Ridley on the move. That contract was massive. The Titans would have to be a team to eat some of that up. And I know they don't want to really get rid of everything around Cam Ward. They still want this year to be somewhat of a viable season for their number one overall pick. And that's why I think they're more open to moving guys on the defensive side of the ball. You saw their corner move just yesterday. And that's a name to keep an eye on, but I don't really see him being entirely on the move. Jaylen Waddle's a name that a lot of people have kind of kicked around and maybe teams have been interested in calling Miami about. I don't see him moving. I think he can work in a variety of offenses, even if they make a change in terms of the coaching staff. You still have Tua Tagovailoa at $54 million guaranteed in 2026. You're probably going to have somebody for him to throw the football to. I don't think Waddle's going anywhere, but man, teams would be, the reason teams are interested and curious if he is available is it's not a huge amount of money at like $36 million for this and all of next year is not a, breaking the bank with the way he plays and the way some of these receiver contracts are going. But I don't think he's really on the move. But the receiver market is something to keep an eye on because there is a need, and this is what we usually see when it drives movement, a need from teams that have legitimate Super Bowl aspirations, and you have some players in terms of contract might not be part of teams' plans next year. And when that happens, you get something oftentimes during the deadline. All right, we got a lot going on there. Who wants DJ Moore underutilized with the Bears? That's a name that sneakily has come up, but I haven't seen the Bears really being all that aggressive about where it's at. Shout out to you, James. Let's go. Positivity. Let's go. I was getting harassed yesterday, so I'm very excited about this. Giants, I mentioned them about in the receivers thing. I know Jordan Schultz had Thibodeau come up as maybe a potential guy that could be shopped. I mean, they're loaded on the defensive line. They're flushed with talent there. We know that they're trying to rebuild around this young quarterback and this running back that obviously Scadaboo goes down with the injury, but they feel like they have some juice and identity. I think they'd be looking to maybe, I'm not sure, I haven't heard that firsthand, so I don't want to say it, but I would say the Giants are looking to see what's available out there in terms of maybe making a move or two before the deadline. Jeffrey Simmons is just talk. Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons is not going anywhere. There's no buzz around him. Our team's interested, certainly. The reason there is buzz is there are teams seeing blood in the water with the Titans. You have a new general manager. You have a new front office kind of group that he has brought in that's reevaluating all of the talent there. And they're seeing if everybody is on the table. My understanding is it's really Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons are not on the table. It's kind of similar to Max Crosby with the Raiders, where it's hey, this guy is kind of an identity piece for what we want to be defensively or maybe as a team in our entirety, and he's not really available. But teams are calling because he's that good of a player. That's something that they would like to see. Patriots news. Talked to somebody yesterday. I think they're interested in making something happen. Could they be interested in possibly maybe an edge rusher or something? Could Duggar be on the move? I think that's probably going to happen. I don't know if they make any giant splashes. Somebody I talked to there last night said, yeah, we're always in the mix and we're always trying to see if we can better our roster. 90% of the things that are kind of getting the works between two teams never end up happening. But we'll see. So that means there are kind of being involved a little bit there. Any Seahawks news? I think Reek Wollen's kind of the one that a lot of people around the league are looking at. I think there is some interest in corners. Certainly, we'll get to that when we get to the Jets. But I think that's something that we could see there with Seattle. Just did the Pats, Niners. We'll get to them in a second. Ravens. We'll get to them. Want Quinn Williams to the Ravens, so we'll get to that. All right, let's go to the position with the most buzz, because a lot of what you guys are asking is around this buzz, and that's edge rushers. Receivers and edge rushers are common, maybe more so than some other positions when it comes to the trade deadline, because of contracts, because of plans changing, because prices go up, and then at the same time with edge rushers, you can plug and play a player right away. That was a mouthful, and I can't believe I said it right. You can plug and play a player. And it's see ball, get ball a little bit. You can start just playing on third downs and make an impact right away. I look for edge rusher to be something that teams that are contenders are looking for, those closers. The one that we always look at all the time, right, is the big move that the Rams made for Von Miller a few years back, where it helped push them over the edge and win that Super Bowl. And our teams that have Super Bowl aspirations that are looking for edge help, part of that. Look for the Niners. They've been making calls. They've been trying to go out there and see if they can get somebody to help with their edge rush. You saw that game against Houston. CJ Stroud has had barely any time to throw this entire season, and he went out and threw for over 300 yards against this Niners team because he wasn't under a whole lot of pressure. Can they find someone to go out there and make a difference in terms of going after the quarterback? What I do think is they're in a bit of this reset with their roster and their salary cap. Do you want to give up the assets in the future? If you are uncertain a Super Bowl run can happen here, and it's hard to evaluate that right now. I think John Lynch is doing it as he's making calls to see what the price will be out there, because I do think there's more buyers than probably sellers at talent-wise, which might drive the price tag up for those sellers. And I think that could hurt a team like the Niners going, okay, are we a legitimate Super Bowl contender? We've played well with all these injuries. Kyle Shanahan's coached his butt off, but they have to look at Ricky Pearsall coming back and Brock Purdy coming back and Brandon Ayuk coming back and Kittle's already back. Will this offense be rocking at the point to where we think we can really be a contender? Do they pull the trigger? I think they're making calls and seeing. I think the Patriots are looking at edge up front as well. I think the Lions are also looking at edge and possibly in their secondary. They were interested in McCreary the other day. They were one of the teams that was interested in him from the Titans, but ended up not getting him. So I think the edge and secondary for them. I think the Eagles are certainly looking at edge. Howie Roseman's on a bye, people. This is Howie Roseman without having, a game that week. Somebody make sure he's not calling everybody, because he probably is. The Brandon Graham move, to my understanding, did not change their thinking about going after an edge rusher. Yes, Nolan Smith's coming back in a couple of weeks. That helps their edge group. But I think they're still going to be looking to get after the quarterback a little bit better. And with as good as their interior defensive line is, with both Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and those guys in the middle, you could have a guy come in on the outside that's maybe not a marquee name now and play even better, because offensive lines have to be worried about this group on the interior. I think Brandon Graham's going to come in. He's going to play a handful of snaps. I think he actually will be impactful, but they're still looking to do something there. I think the Bucs could also be looking at the potential of adding somebody off the edge, as well as the Ravens, maybe a D tackle or the edge. I could see Baltimore still looking to see. I don't think they think they're out of it. They have a favorable schedule over these next couple of weeks. They go and beat Miami on Thursday, and Lamar is supposed to play. They win 2 games when nobody else has won a game in the division. They can win 2 games before another team wins a game in the division, and they can get themselves back in this. And we know that, Eric DeCosta has made moves in the past. Could he go out and do something? I think that edge spot is something that we're looking at. I got Saints news. I think the receivers are what everybody's looking at very clearly. I think that's what a lot of eyes are on. Somebody from that group is going to most likely get moved, and Shaheed is kind of the one that everybody kind of has circled. We'll see. Giants trading Tibbs. I think they'll listen. Haven't really dug on that yet. I was taping shows all this morning, so we'll see. Hendrickson, Highsmith news. Trey Hendrickson doesn't appear to be going anywhere at all. I really don't think so. Patriots news just told you some. I still think the Bengals are going to keep on to him. Philly has to be looking for corner, I think. And I think they're also like Jacorian Bennett. I know they want to take a look at him and see where he's at in that other corner spot. I think corner and edge are the 2 spots they're looking. But some other corner names came up, and the Eagles weren't one of the names that came up, which was interesting. Somebody needs to save Myles Garrett from the Browns. My buddy Albert Beer over at SI kind of came up with an idea that, like, the Browns should be listening, in all honesty. What if somebody's going to offer you 3 first-round picks for Myles Garrett? Like, But I mean, he chose to stay there. Let's be honest. Colts news. I could see them standing pat. I mean, they got a great thing going right now. If they do anything, keep an eye on them potentially looking at the defensive line. If they could find a piece, a rotational piece, something of that nature. I know everybody wants to say Trey Hendrickson going back and playing with Lou Anarumo. I just, that's not happening. But at the same time, it's look for them to maybe add something in a piece. Bill's willing to trade Coleman. I don't know who would take Keon Coleman right now, honestly. I mean, that's why they're looking to add a receiver because it's been that bad on the outside. Can Cam Jordan or Chase Young get moved off the Saints? Cam Jordan, the dead money would just be way more than you're willing to probably deal with. And I know he probably wants to stay there. Cam just has that vibe. I know him a little bit of wanting to probably play for one organization for most of his career. Let's get to this Jets defensive sale. That might answer some of your guys' questions about where you're at. Bill's news at wide receiver kind of covered that in the top of it. Sorry if you missed it, but they're still looking. Browns elevating tight end signs another practice squad. Njoku. I think Njoku's willing. That's something that you can keep an eye on. The Browns have already made several moves. And I think they're on a bye right now. And they know that this is a rebuild around this young core of rookies that have played really, really well for them. Fannin being one of them at the tight end spot. And Njoku could be somebody that comes in and helps another team. I think Shelby Harris could be one of those guys as well. Denver offensive moves. I know they're sniffing around at both receiver and tight end a little bit. I don't know how aggressive they'll be at either one of those spots, but at their record right now and the way they're playing defensively, could they maybe be aggressive? We'll see. Let's talk refs next. That'd be interesting. All right, let's go to the Jets defensive sale. As they sit on this bye week, I know that they're trying to evaluate everything as an organization about where they stand, and they're going to take a hard look at where they're at. A lot of people around the league believe that they're going to be sellers, believe that anybody on an expiring contract that's not going to be part of the future, obviously somebody that could be put out there. The question everybody's curious about is, are they going to move any of those guys that are non-expiring contracts? And let's take a look at where they stand in terms of some of these edge rushers. Because remember, they have a good chunk of cap space. I put this down here for a reason. $74 million in cap space in 2026. That's great. But they just have 2 picks before day 3 in 2026. So they might want to have an incentive to move some of these guys. I think a lot of people are looking at Quincy Williams possibly moving, last of his deal. Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald are the 2 guys that everybody's kind of having their eye on, because I mentioned about pass rushers. It seems like they may be more willing to part ways with Johnson than Will McDonald. That's kind of what it seems like. In terms of contract, he's only in his 3rd year, as Jermaine Johnson's in his 4th year. He goes up in that 5th year option next year, though, to $13.4 million. That's not a ton of money to pay for a pass rusher in their 5th year. Yes, he's coming off that Achilles from 2024, and I think people are trying to see, what type of player you are getting. But, a place like Philly, like I look at it and go, all right, Jermaine Johnson was at Georgia, then he transferred to Florida State, but he was at Georgia. Half of Georgia is playing on that Philadelphia defense, whether it's Nakobe Dean or Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis or Nolan Smith. Maybe that's somebody that Philly looks at. I think people are curious about Will McDonald. It doesn't seem like they're as willing to move him as possible, but he's somebody that's there. I think Michael Carter, the corner, is definitely somebody that might be a cap casualty at the end of the season anyways. And so that could be somebody that might be, on the move if they can get something for him. And where he's at, I think Quinnen Williams is somebody that everybody's interested in, and everybody is curious of where the Jets are at if that will happen. My understanding is I don't think that's going to happen, but obviously every player in this league has a price. There's a very, very select group of players that are just unavailable. Outside of them, everybody's available. I would assume people would call to try to see if Quinnen Williams has a price. And then if the Jets are smart, they should probably listen. All right, cornerback for the Broncos. I think actually that secondary for Denver is actually pretty deep. Remember, they had a luxury pick almost in the 1st round when they got Jahdae Barron in the 1st round, which many people believe was the best corner in this draft. He actually had an interception this past week against Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Sean Payton actually, to my understanding, really thought they played well after Pat Surtain went down. They do have a lot of players back there. I mean, Jaquan McMillan's a good player. Actually, Riley Moss gets picked on all the time. Going into week 8, he had the lowest completion percentage of any quarter that's been targeted 50 times or more. So, I think they have, and they have 2 safeties. Brandon Jones is an underrated safety. I think they might be good back there, in all honesty. Send us Sauce. Oh, okay, interesting. A lot of people are on the fence about Sauce. Can Brian Thomas Jr. Be had, or is it a not starter for them to get going? It's interesting. Liam Cohen said that report was just, no, they're not trading him. But I could see them listening. I really could. He was obviously picked by the previous group. He had an outstanding year. Could you get a ton back for him? They gave up a lot for who they believe is a superstar wide receiver in Travis Hunter. How did that impact Brian Thomas Jr.? I'm curious. I mean, you were third in the NFL in receiving, sixth in the NFL in touchdowns, and then they go and trade away a first round pick to get a guy who plays receiver and corner. Is there too many mouths there? I don't know. Travis Hunter's not playing a ton of snaps yet, but it looks like it's going to grow. I wouldn't be shocked if the Jaguars are listening to see if what somebody would offer. I don't think he's getting moved, but I'd be shocked if they wouldn't even just listen. Does Rico Dowdle or Chuba Hubbard have any trade value currently? I think they're going to go with Rico, by the way, with getting the predominant amount of these carries. With the new contract, it's going to be hard to trade Hubbard. Running back Jalen Wright from Miami to Arizona. And I think backs could be on the move, potentially, but I think that market's cooled down a little bit, to be entirely honest with you. Trying to go back through some of these because I saw it moving. And I love all of your guys' chats here. Reek to the Eagles. He plays a lot of man. He's better in that, certainly, as a big boundary guy. Commanders news. Bummer one last night. I don't know if they're going to, they swung big last year at the deadline. And I don't think Adam Peters wants to give up a boatload of picks. And where they're at right now in their season, I don't know if I entirely see them being very, 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 very active. And where they stand right now. Let's get back to the bottom here. We saw some breaking news. Ship Digger now. Yeah, I just saw. I just said Duggar could be definitely on the move. I think that's being something that's probably going to certainly happen. Also in Jacoby Myers trade market. He has a market. He definitely does. I think there's plenty of teams that think he'd be a great addition to their group. Mentioned that at the top. So let's get down to this Vikings quarterback situation because it's worth mentioning. But we'll get to you guys as well. Listen, it's been an interesting go. Kevin O'Connell thinks the world of himself in terms of developing quarterbacks, and he should. He's brilliant at it. I'm not sure there's anybody better. But they did look at, obviously, bringing back Sam Darnold. That got too expensive. They looked at Daniel Jones. He understood that there was a spot in Indy that he could go and win that starting job clearly over Anthony Richardson, and he did it. They kicked the tires a little bit with some conversations on Aaron Rodgers, but in essence, they wanted J.J. McCarthy to come in here and step in. And they thought if they built this team up well and they spent money in the offseason in the trenches, which they did, they could maybe insulate him enough to go out there and play. The issue has been he hasn't had back-to-back practices since week one. He went out there in week one. I think he had a rough first half, right? Second half plays much better, plays a great quarter in week two. But in that week, he has the baby, and then he gets injured, and now he's been battling through, rehab and getting healthy. And my understanding is they never really wanted to put him back on the field until he had like a full week of practice to prep and get ready. Now he has an extended week of practice to get ready for this Lions game. Has the ability, with where they played on Thursday, to go out there and make sure that he can get fully healthy to go out there and play, because a big part of that is a lot of the stuff that goes over the middle of the field with Justin Jefferson and company. They need his footwork to be really good. So obviously they need the ankle to be really good, because then with the feet and the eyes tied together, when Kevin O'Connell kind of preaches it. Keep an eye on them adding a veteran to this room. I'm not sure it's a splash play by any sense, but I think they could add a veteran to that room as well, probably before this game comes up on Sunday. What else do we got? Vikings can take Cooper Rush. That might be sneaky. Like, we might come back and look at this move that they made during the bye week. That John Harbaugh goes out and says, we're going to do Snoop Hundley, and we're going to plan for 2 weeks essentially for him if Lamar Jackson can't go. And we're going to pass on Cooper Rush, who we guaranteed $6 million for to be our backup, because we think Snoop fits, what we want to do more, and the way this offense is designed, the way the quarterback run game is designed. We may look at back as they're kind of on a win every week to get themselves back in this. And if they lose, it's each loss is compounded greatly as a massive move by John Harbaugh. We'll see. Didn't Kamara say he'd retire if he was traded? Yes, he said he'd be drinking, I don't know what drink he selected. Mai Tais, I'm not sure what it was, or pina coladas on a beach if he did. And Mickey Loomis, I want to say this with the Saints. Mickey Loomis communicates with his players very, very well, specifically his veteran players. And he makes sure that there's an open line of communication there. Kamara said he does not want to. I see Njoku in the move. I think a lot of people could. Devin Singletary, I think the running back market is okay. Jarrett Stidham might be a good fit for TJ, of course. Jarrett Stidham's one of the best backups in football, I'll be honest. For the love of God, please tell me good news about the Steelers. I think they are really taking a look at receivers. The defense, though, is a problem right now, and they've already made moves on that defense. I think they might be stuck with it. but we'll see what ends up happening. Will Chargers make a move at O-line? I think they're seeing if they could. The problem with O-line, and the Chargers know this, is and like Denver would like to add some depth to their O-line before this trade deadline. If you're any good, you're either playing or the team's not going to give you up. There's just so few good offensive linemen in this league. They're at such a premium that moving them at the deadline is really difficult. I think the Chargers would love to do that. I think they still could be cooking the tires on a running back. We'll see. But I do think that's where they're standing right now. And the Eagles rumors surfacing. I think Howie's really looking at edge and corner right now to see what he can make work, and see if anything's there. What's the odds that Chris Godwin gets traded? I don't think that's happening. I said Denver needs tight end depth. I think that I mentioned that they're looking there a little bit. Titans, I would say on the defensive side, keep an eye on anybody maybe possibly be on the move. Less likely on the offensive side. Let's get to Aaron Rodgers here, and we have 4 minutes to go, so I can do this and then answer all the way till the very, very end. Can San Francisco get some edge help? They're looking. They're certainly looking. Evan Neal to the Chargers. He's been a great, obviously he's been inactive. I think probably teams call on him. It's a good question. I'm going to write that down actually, and see what I can go after there. Aaron Rodgers. Ask Copilot this. It's a trivia question. Throw this down before I say it in the chat and see if anybody gets it. How many teams have had a winning season with a QB aged 42 years or older? Can you get me the teams and the years possibly, and maybe the player? We asked Copilot this. Anybody have it? Let's see if anybody has it. Falcons trade for Myers or Waddle. I don't see the Falcons. I'm going to answer a question of these while I wait for an answer in here. I don't think the Falcons are trading for a receiver. They just need Darnell Mooney to be healthy on the outside. No Texans news at all. Will they be active? I mean, Nick is a pretty active general manager. I haven't heard anything about Houston, honestly. Doesn't mean nothing won't happen. I just haven't heard anything. Tampa Bay, yep, that's an answer. Tampa Bay is right in 2021 with Tom Brady. And Tampa and Brady, we got it. There's one other one. I'll just say it. Brady with the Patriots in 2019. He was 42. So this leads into Rodgers is 41. Will he come back in 2026? Talking to people there, they really like him in the locker room. He's really well liked in the room. He's really enjoying his time. He's enjoying his time with Arthur Smith and what him and Art have put together in this offense. Obviously, he has a ton of respect for Mike Tomlin. He's not getting hit a ton. He's getting his mobility back. You're seeing him play outside the pocket a little bit, in the red zone where he's always been just so brilliant there, one of the greatest of all time. And you're seeing, the relationship with him and DK and how that's flourished in this passing game. Will Omar Khan go out and get him another receiver, try to push this thing over the edge? We'll see. I think he's enjoying himself. He hasn't said anything about wanting to play pass this year. He's been very reasonable in his price. I think he's getting paid $13 million this year to play quarterback. This is something that the Steelers, to my understanding, are open to right now. So that shows you the way they feel. Aaron's obviously, as we all know, a little bit of a different cat. So we'll see what he wants to do after this season. But I think him returning isn't completely out of the question. We're almost done. We got 2 minutes here. We'll do 2 minutes of questions. Then, of course, both is Brady. Yeah, exactly. Should somebody go after Kyle Pitts? It's dormant. Seems like they haven't done, and this is why teams go after certain players. It's a great thought to bring up, and I'll get to the Dolphins in a second, to bring up Kyle Pitts, because oftentimes when teams read the tea leaves, and that's why every team is interested in Breece Hall, because they're going, you aren't making any moves in terms of contract negotiations between your player and the organization on an extension. And why aren't you doing that? Is he not part of your plans? We'll take him off your hands. Same thing with Kyle Pitts. There's been no discussions, to my understanding, about Kyle Pitts and a new contract with the Falcons, and returning there. And so when you have the talent in the draft spot that Kyle Pitts was at, and he's really the third, maybe fourth option at times in the way this offense operates, they weren't going to really go and look for a contract extension. I will say this, though. Pitts, in their eyes, has played far better this year than he did last year. He's moving around much better, further removed from that injury. Maybe he does return. Maybe they're waiting this out, but I don't think right now with where they stand, they want to ship Kyle Pitts in any sense. Asking price for Jermaine Johnson, a third, fourth, something like that, possibly could maybe be in that range, I guess. Colts look like the best team in the NFL. Any defensive upgrading news? I think up front they could look for a piece. But the Colts have been outstanding, certainly. Jalen Phillips, let's say this before we go. Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. I would think one of them is most likely on the move. I think teams, obviously, like we mentioned earlier in the show, edge rusher is extremely valuable to some of these contenders. I could see one of those guys being on the move. How about this? We'll end on this. Who used to be the defensive coordinator in Miami? Eagles defense coordinator Vic Fangio. If you would like one of them, Vic also had Bradley Chubb in Denver. So maybe one of those guys lands up in Philadelphia. I would think one of those guys Miami ends up parting ways with. Who? We'll see. Asking prices are different, but that's kind of where it stands right there. Panthers, I could see defensive side of the ball up front maybe being something of interest, but again, I don't think as a whole, guys, as I say goodbye, there's going to be as many moves as we all maybe were predicting a couple weeks ago. I think there's definitely going to be some movement. It may not be as much as we thought. Not a lot of insults in here. I'm really, really happy about that. I really, really appreciate that as well. And we'll get back to you guys tomorrow at noon. I see some of these questions. I want to get to all of them, but I got a boogie. Was it Jesse Bates looks to have taken a step back, role change, scheme change, how's him staying in Atlanta. I think he's still so valuable to that defense. They've gotten better up front. He's still the leader of the group, even if something isn't there. Great job as always. I appreciate it. Awesome. All right, everybody. I will see you tomorrow at noon. Don't forget, we'll be doing one of these Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, and Monday before the deadline. So make sure you catch all of those. I'll try to bring some different position stuff, some latest news, latest nuggets. If you can, please join us. Take it easy.